is the Fort Bend Herald Football Scoreboard Show with Joel Luna and Sam Cinta, bringing you this week's latest on the gridiron from around the Bend.
5 teams entered, 1 team remains in the UIL State Football Playoffs after the bi-district round. Sam Cinta and Joel Luna here on the Fort Bend Herald Football Scoreboard Show. Thank you guys for tuning in and checking out the action from over the weekend. And man, we came into this week super busy. Had more teams in the postseason than a year ago. Kind of bouncing all over the area, and now our focus, at least here at the Herald, stays on the reigning and defending champion Randle Lions, and a tough weekend for our other 4 teams in the tournament.
Week 12 was very rough for us because I don't think we had a week like that before, at least during the season. Of course, when you have teams like we do, we knew these teams. We knew more or less what kind of weekend it was going to be, mainly because we'd seen some of these teams enough times and knew that getting past the first round was going to be tough.
Yeah, it was, and obviously you had matchups like Needville going up against an unbeaten Houston Yates team. You thought that was tough. Foster certainly was going to have its hands full with Katy Jordan, and you know what the Katy Tigers bring to the table against George Ranch. Honestly, I was hoping to see a little bit of a better showing out of Fulshire against Seco Ranch, and to be perfectly frank, a little better showing out of Needville as well.
Yeah.
Both of those games kind of turned into blowouts in the second half, and of course, we'll keep the train rolling here with the Randle Lions as long as they can keep up their repeat bid. But yeah, like you said, disappointing, but at the end of the day, not all of that surprising in the bi-district round.
I think George Ranch was just happy to be playing at Legacy Stadium. Not too many people get to play there, but when you play at Katy, a team that not many people get to play, unless if, you're scheduled during their district or in the playoffs. But to play a team like that, you certainly do learn a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Coach Vogt learned a lot more this year, and even though he saw their practice last year, but seeing them firsthand is quite eye-opening. And this is supposed to be a down year for Katy.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be an up year,
yeah.
Especially with all the talk going on in the press box. Many people didn't see them going past a bi-district round. In the press box, at least that's what the talk was. But the old Katy showed up. I mean, they dominated the way they've been dominating many other teams. As far as Needville is concerned, I thought Needville played a good game. Mm-hmm. Reason is because if you would have seen the game, you would have seen the discrepancy in the athleticism between both teams. Needville comes out, and yeah, they're Needville. They're small. Houston Yates comes out, and boy, they are big on the defensive line.
Yeah,
so I think eventually that wore them out a little bit. When you're going up against guys that big and that fast, that speed was what really did it to them. So, I thought Needville hung in there for the first half, only down by a score going into the third period. And, of course, Kobe Campbell was a little bit rough. He got hurt in the second period, and you didn't really see him much until the final series of the game. You saw him in there just to go in there, play one play, and then he was out. So he wasn't 100%. But, I thought they played well. Yeah, and these teams, our teams, got outscored 204 to 119 in the series. Or, just this past weekend. Fulshire was a disappointment. Obviously it was because of the way they played. But, I think their youth showed.
Yeah, it's a shame for somebody like Sean Patel, who had the great season that he had all year, to kind of go out this way. I thought Fulshire struggled to consistently move the ball through the air, which is surprising given how well that had turned in Fulshire's direction throughout the course of the season. Between their inconsistencies running the ball, which we had seen all year long, and their inability to give Patel the kind of time and comfort in the pocket to throw the ball the way he wanted to, I think compounded. That's a 14-0 game at halftime. They get a stop on Seco's first drive of the second half. And between a mistake with a holding penalty on the punt return and just a good punt from the Cougars, start the drive 1st and 10 from your own 1 yard line. You can't set the edge at right tackle. They're down their starting right tackle, their starting right guard in that game. They can't set the edge. Caden Bean is brought down in the end zone for a safety at 16-0. Cinco gets the ball back, drives, scores a touchdown, and really that was the ball game. At that point in time, that was the backbreaker. It's rough to say it early on in the third quarter like that, but ultimately that turned out to be the kill shot. And just Fulshear could never recover. You talk Stephen Hill after the game. He feels like he let his team down. He does. Patel threw a couple late turnovers. I think the game was really mostly in hand by that point anyway. But Hill's taking the blame. I don't necessarily know if that's fair either. I think there's a lot of reasons. One of them being you're only starting 60% of your starting offensive line. That's a tough pill to swallow first round of the postseason. So
I think Sean Patel and the Chargers. What they finished with was what they started with this season. When you play a Pearland and a Ridge Point like that, that's the way that they finished the season, like that.
Well, and let's give credit to Davis Rupp too. The starting quarterback for Cinco Ranch was consistent. Never really put the ball in trouble. Didn't really let pressure get to him. I thought that he commanded the game and kept Cinco out of a lot of third and long situations. They stayed ahead of the change on schedule, and in doing so made those third downs much more manageable. They never really had to stress out offensively. That with Marcus Gadlin in the backfield, having the game he did, a couple touchdowns, 130 plus yards on the ground. Tough balance to beat, and that's what burned him.
And I think Patel should be happy. He should be very happy coming from Seven Lakes where he couldn't do much with what he had over there. Coming to this year and doing what he did, he probably got a nod to go to college and play some football, man.
He did have some visits. I think he visited UTPB, Permian Basin earlier, in the fall here, and I'm sure he'll get some more looks. Would have liked to, I'm sure, put some more postseason tape out there for coaches to look at. But all in all, a pretty good year for Fulshear, good year for all 4 of our teams that bowed out in the first round, and certainly continues to be a good year for Randle. So we will dive in here to our game-by-game recaps. We're going to start with the Lions picking up a big first-round win over Killeen Ellison. It wasn't clean. It wasn't pretty. But at the end of the day, Thursday night at Guy K. Traylor Memorial Stadium, it was a 54-20 win for the Randle Lions over Killeen Ellison to stretch their best in Texas winning streak to 27 games and advance to the area round at Merrill Green Stadium in Bryan for a second year in a row. Guys, I'll tell you what. Bryan Randle was not thrilled after this game. He was happy his team survived and advanced. He's happy that his team is still playing football and is still practicing and is still earning of the privilege to continue their season. But he told me, if you think that the way that we played tonight was good enough to get back to Dallas, you're drunk. And that just is what it is. A slow start, really across the board, both for the Randle offense, for the Randle defense. The Randle defense was missing tackles. The offense was slow to get footing. I thought the offensive line was getting dominated up front early. Landon Williams-Callis only had 30 yards across his first 10 touches, which for him is just absolutely unheard of, certainly in the first round of the playoffs. The special teams units were picking up flags, plural, on punts and on kick returns. It wasn't pretty. There was very little about the game that was pretty. Tyler Skrbanek threw an interception right before the half that had Bryan Randle particularly heated on the sideline. Not at Skrbanek, more so at the coaches and the play call that led to that situation. He would have preferred to see the team, it was with 7 seconds left, just a few ticks left on the clock before halftime where they took a shot at the end zone. Randle said he would have preferred the team hand the ball off instead of for a field goal that would have put the team up 41-14 going into the halftime. It didn't quite work out that way. Instead, it's an interception. It's 38-14 at the break. And just the little things. that Randle wants to do, that wants to dominate, they want to nail so that they can set themselves up for another run at the title. Now, I did think strong performances despite the doom and gloom coming out of Randle there, right? Tyler Skrbanek, 26-32, had a rushing touchdown where he pushed the pile on a tush push, 2 passing touchdowns against the 1 interception. Landon Williams-Callis went over 200 yards, 3 scores, 28 carries, I think it was. Noriel Dominguez, interception, fumble recovery. Kyron Cooley with a pick 6, and Mason Brantley had an interception as well. So there were highlights, and there were guys that had good games. Ashton Johnson, 7 catches, over 120 yards and a score. Kamar Chavez-Brown, 4 catches, 90-some-odd yards and a score. So there were highlights. I said this during the halftime show for Legacy Sports when I was doing the Full Cinco Ranch game Friday night. Look, we can sit here and rag on what a disastrous first quarter it was for Randle and how they just didn't play up to the standard that we're used to seeing out of this program. We could say all of these things, and at the same time, look at the score. They scored 54 points and won by 34 in the playoffs. That's just how high the mark has been for the Lions over the last couple of years, right? Even dating back to the season before the state title when, if they beat Huntsville in that regional semifinal, who knows what this run looks like at that point. They are going to have to be better. We talk about that a little bit later in this podcast as well, but they have to be better than they were on Thursday night. If you remember a season ago, they played Belton. And this is kind of a funny story. I was asking Bryan Randle about how do you respond to disappointing performance in the first round, because I remember last year they played Belton. They gave up a touchdown they tried a fake punt. The snap was mishandled. The ball was dropped. Belton's defense, or I guess special teams, grabbed the ball, scooped it, returned it for a touchdown to tie the game 7-7. Randle went on to, keep them off the board, keep the Tigers off the board the rest of the game, en route to a big blowout win. But I distinctly remember after that game, Coach Randle was upset that they gave up the 7 points. He wanted the shutout. He wanted his team to look more perfect than they did. They clearly looked, again, imperfect Thursday night. And I asked him, are you going to be kind of tackling area round prep the same way you did last year, given that you were also kind of had a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth? And what's funny is, while Randle and I were talking on the field after the game, talking about that moment, who comes up to Coach Randle to say hi but class of 2025 linebacker and punter Perry Kindred, the very guy involved in the play that we were talking about, came over to say hi. Now, I do want to say, yes, Kindred dropped that ball on the punt, but he made big plays during that postseason run, had a huge play, interception in the state championship game, obviously helped turn the tide and help that team pull off the championship upset over South Oak Cliff. So it was cool to see Perry come back and say hi to Coach Randle, and Coach and I kind of looked at each other a couple times in almost disbelief, like, man, speak it into existence, right? Talking about that moment and who shows up, but other than the guy involved in that moment. So it was cool to see Perry. But going back to that question of, are you handling it the same way you did after the Belton game going into the Elgin game in the area around last year? And Randle said yes. That's pretty much exactly it. He said that he felt bad for the guys. He felt bad for his team because he knew how much that he and his staff were going to push him. And it's on the staff as well. Coach Randle expects excellence. He's one of those guys who goes, I'm not an ego guy. You can't have an ego and coach on my staff. But that doesn't mean he's lax on his expectations. So this week, they've been hard at work trying to turn the page, trying to be better. We've talked a little bit here about how the bracket shook out in favor of the Lions. You don't have to play, you only have to play Iowa Colony or Brenham or Liberty Hill. There's not like last year where you had to play Brenham to play Iowa Colony. You only had to play one of them. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to play the way that they did Thursday night the rest of the way moving forward and expect to get back to AT&T Stadium in Jerry World. Certainly in the regional final, they're going to have to find more of what the gear looked like the second, third, and fourth quarters against Iowa Colony the first time around than what we saw against the Eagles. Here's what Bryan Randle had to say about that performance and where it leaves the Lions going into the second round.
If we think that we can go out and play like that and get to Dallas, then we're all drunk or something.
Yeah.
Something is clearly wrong with us. If we really think that effort is not good, play calling not there. It was just rough, and I don't know if it was the Saturday to Thursday turnaround, or they're the 4th seed, we're the 1 seed. Like, it's just so many different things that you don't know. But they're a quality team, and that's the thing. They've got 4 Division I kids out there. Number 7 is going to Baylor. Number 1's going, I think, UTSA. Number 5 is just a sophomore. He's going to be able to, get to go where he wants to go.
Yeah.
You know, they have speed. Like, it's not Belton. Who are we kidding? Like, if it was Belton, a different game. You know, maybe we have a different conversation, but it's not. Like, they're a quality team, like, they're well coached, and we didn't put our best foot forward tonight at all. I mean, we could score 54-20. Nonsense.
Looking to make your next real estate move but unsure where to start? The Ace Hernandez team at Manor Lane Southwest has you covered. The Ace Hernandez team is Fort Bend and Southwest Houston's real estate experts with 75 years of experience in guiding homeowners and home buyers alike. Contact the Ace Hernandez team at 281-762-6757 and find out more about their seller financing options today.
Well, it's playoff time, and it sure got here real quick. Like week 12 as the bi-district playoffs started this past Thursday with the George Ranch Longhorns getting into the football playoffs after working hard to place himself 4th overall in District 26A. It wasn't an easy chore for head coach Casey Vogt and his assistants, but they got the job done. On Thursday night, the Longhorns played in the 6A bi-district Division II playoffs against the Katy Tigers. But the Longhorns ran out of time in the short playoff run after the Tigers eliminated them with a 42-7 setback at Katy's Legacy Stadium. However, the Longhorns came to play, and they showed it right away to the home-standing Tigers on their first drive of the game when the Tigers had a 4th and 1 at their own 49-yard line. But defensive lineman Chad Reynolds burst through the Tiger offensive line to tackle Tremaine Hill for a 1-yard loss as the Longhorns took the ball over at the 48 of Katy. That was sweet how that senior defender blew up that play. But the Katy Tigers have been a long-standing premier team in the sport since the early 1990s. And even though they have been a bit down, they still get into playoffs, but haven't had the kind of success that has placed them in state championships like in past seasons. Still, they came back on George Ranch on the second drive, using 6 plays to cover 84 yards when wide receiver Drake Hopkins caught a tipped ball for a 41-yard score and a 7-0 lead in the first quarter. The Horns, they didn't twitch. They knew they were in it, and they knew they were going to see some things. So they showed their offense to the Tigers with a powerful 48-yard run from Hayden Drinkard from its own 15 to the 37 of Katy. Eventually, the Longhorns had the ball at the 11-yard line on a first down, but failed on the first 2 plays with a 0 run by Drinkard and then an incompletion. Still, 3rd and 10, George Ranch quarterback Tony Morrison headed back for a pass, but instead was gang-tackled as he fumbled the ball away with Katy recovering. Now, the Tigers needed just 2 plays to cover 81 yards, with Hill going for a 78-yard run all the way into the end zone and a 14-0 lead. Eventually, the Tigers went on to score 3 more touchdowns for a halftime lead of 35-0. Now, George Ranch knew what they were going to face. They're facing a powerful Katy squad that even when they're down, they're still very strong. So at halftime, they talked it over in the locker room, coming out a different squad. How? They put more effort into their play as they allowed just 1 more score from Katy. They got on the board in the final period when Morrison found Trevor Blitz for a 28-yard touchdown in those final moments. Now, after the game, the Longhorns celebrated a bit even though they had lost in the by-district round. They celebrated with the 35 seniors that will graduate after this season. Just hanging out with their friends and doing what they do as boys, they had a good time. Now, George Ranch did finish the season, and they accomplished their goals. They made the playoffs. They'll be back again next season.
In need of a partner to help you reach your financial goals? Houston Federal Credit Union is your local credit union. With checking accounts, savings accounts, auto loans, mortgage loans, business loans, and credit cards, Houston Federal Credit Union can help you achieve all of your financial dreams. Find out more information at houstonfcu.org to apply online for a loan or membership, and find out more information about how they can help you get where you want to go.
Hoping to get a lengthy stay in the Class 4A Division I playoffs, the Needville Blue Jays ran into a hungry and athletic Houston Yates bunch at Rhodes Stadium in Katy on November 13th, losing 50-24. The Blue Jays came out hungry by scoring 10 points in the first quarter, while holding down a potent Lion offense to no points. Junior running back Kobe Campbell punched in a 2-yard run for a 7-0 lead for the Blue Jays. A bit later, senior cornerback Colton Butler came up with a huge interception for Needville, setting up the offense at the 21 of the Lions. But it took that short drive 7 plays, with the Yates defense doubling down on the defensive line, stopping some of those gaps for Campbell to run through. Eventually, the Blue Jays were held to a 21-yard field goal by Jesus Miranda for a 10-0 zip lead. Outweighed by the offensive and defensive lines for the Lions, that eventually took a toll on Needville. But the Blue Jays continued playing tough. At times, it was hard keeping up with that Yates athleticism. Early in the second quarter, the Division I Lion quarterback Christopher Brown started finding some of his targets, like Edward Chanel, for a 7-yard pass which threw the Lions within a 10-7 deficit at 11:06 of the second period. With the Yates defense still holding down the Needville offense, offensively the Lions started utilizing that speed in the backfield. Practically with 3 running backs in the backfield, most starting getting double digits in yards. After a 25-yard punt from Needville's Miranda, the Lions took over at the 41 of the Blue Jays. The Yates needed just 5 plays thanks to a powerful run from Michael Johnson that went 32 yards, which placed the ball at the 7. After that, Simmons went in untouched from the 5-yard line to take the first lead 13-10 after the extra point failed with 6:34 before the half. On the next series for the Blue Jays on second down, Campbell went down after losing 2 yards. He gingerly walked off the field, but was seen sparingly the rest of the way. A gritty Blue Jay bunch scored once more before the break when Hall saw Carter Hett's slant route and delivered the ball into his hands for an 11-yard score, 17-13 Blue Jays, with 4:18 before halftime. However, the Lions scored twice more on a 39-yard reception by Simmons, 20-17, and also a 37-yard field goal from Ronaldo Johnson with no time on the clock as the Yates Lions went into the locker room up 23-17. In the second half, thanks to some miscues by the Blue Jays, the Lions took advantage by outscoring them 27-7. Needville's only score was a 34-yard reception by sophomore Jaden Williams with 7:25 left in the game. It was a well-played contest by the Blue Jays, despite the unevenness of the situation. Needville hung around after the game, enjoying the surroundings of Rhodes Stadium and also congratulating their 24 seniors that played their last game in the Blue Jay uniform. Yates will face Longview, Pine Tree in the area round. Needville closes out the campaign at 5-6 on the season.
In my opener Thursday night, a big-time opponent coming into Traylor Stadium to take on the Fulshear Chargers in Fort Bend Ridgepoint, the 7th-ranked team in 6A D1. The Panthers are just loaded on both sides of the ball with Division I talent. And one spot in particular that I was really watching closely from the Panthers was that big offensive line. They've got commit going to Texas A&M, a commit going to Arkansas, and a commit going to TCU, all on that front offensively for Ridgepoint. So I was interested to see how the Chargers would respond going up against a team like that, especially, having played a really good Pearland team a week ago in a game that was a little bit closer than the final score would indicate. And last night, or Thursday night, was a game that was closer than the final score would indicate. If you just were to look at the box score Friday morning and see 34-10, you might think, yeah, it's about right. That's kind of what I expected, in this matchup. But that was a 13-10 Ridgepoint lead in the second half. And Fulshear had multiple possessions at that margin to tie or take the lead. And if it's not for a little miscommunication in the backfield at the end of the first half, if it's not for a dropped pass, or maybe let's go a little bit different and say, a quarterback missing an open receiver in the end zone, and if it's not for another fumble, this is an entirely different game. And talking to Fulshear coaches and players after the game, they agree. This was not a contest that was a 3-score game. It just kind of snowballed at the end on the Chargers. And I think it's important, you're going to look at Sean Patel throwing the ball 11-25, 125 yards to score in an interception. And that interception is a dubious distinction on that play. He hit his receiver in the hands. The receiver then got hit in the arms, and the ball popped up and right into the arms of UCF-bound linebacker Preston Hall for what will officially go down as an interception. But, Patel put the ball where you want him to in that spot. So he played well when he was able to throw on station. When he was able to set his feet and get into the throw, he's having balls coming out of his hand that looked really, really good. It's just a lot against a Ridgepoint team that has as Coach Hill said to me earlier this week, 24 guys that are Division I talents on that roster. You've only got 22 that play, at any time, right? So to have 24 Division I guys is really, really something. And I think anybody that saw the last couple of games for Fulshear knows that this team's a work in progress, and while it's tough to go 0-2, you'd rather drop these games here at the end of August, early September, when you're gearing toward a district championship run. And Coach Hill definitely believes that there are better days ahead for the Chargers.
I'm super proud of them. We came a long way.
Yeah.
And, it's not apparent on the scoreboard tonight, but everyone in that locker room, all of our coaches, all of our parents, everybody kind of knows. Like you said, it takes a while to get it turned.
Does your water taste bad, smell bad, leave behind soap scum? Looking for something clean, filtered, and chemical-free to change your life? Natural Springs Water Filtration could have the customized water filtration system for you. Shop local, buy local, shop Fort Bend, your local clean water lady here at Natural Springs Water Filtration. Call today, 281-277-3232. Ask for Rose, the clean water lady, and get a free in-home consultation and $500 off your purchase when you call for your in-home water analysis today. Solve your hard water problems. Get bottled quality water at every tap. Spot free glasses and dishes, and have softer and cleaner claws out of the laundry. Clean, fresh, chemical-free drinking quality water from your tap from Natural Springs Water Filtration. Our business is improving your water. It was the end of the road Friday night at Guy K. Traylor Memorial Stadium in Rosenberg for the Foster Falcons, falling 45-13 to Katy Jordan. Of course, the Falcons knew they were going to have their hands full against a Warriors team that came into the season ranked in the Dave Campbell's Texas Football preseason poll in 6A. And unfortunately for the Falcons, struggles moving the ball, and a lack of consistency defensively both contributed, as they had much of the season, to a difficult loss against a really, really talented team. I don't think this takes away anything from what Foster did throughout the course of the season. Second year in a row, they started out winless in the non-district slate, had a tough start to district schedule, then they beat George Ranch, and are able to find some footing and clinch the top seed in 6A D2 in District 26A. I was talking to Coach Hanks last week ahead of this game. He had mentioned, he kind of chuckled as he said it. It's funny, having the year that we did and the struggles that we did early, and a tough loss to Elsick that we really wanted to win at Crump Stadium earlier in the year. All of those things aside, we still ended up in exactly the same spot that we would have been had we gone undefeated in the season, which is that number 1 seed in 6A D2 by virtue of being essentially the third largest playoff qualifying school in that district. Kind of going to see what the Falcons did specifically on Friday. Cannon Wolf had 96 yards, 6-21 throwing the ball. They had not a lot of rushing yards going for them in that win, or in the loss. Pardon me. Thomas Dogate for Jordan had 143 yards, 3 scores on 13 and 20 passes. He did have an interception to go with 21 yards on the ground. Had a couple of guys go over 50 yards rushing on 27 combined carries. So I guess it was at 134 yards total for the two backs coming out of the backfield for the Warriors. And again, as disappointing as this may have been, I know Foster wanted to muddy this game up, keep it close, keep it ugly, hope that, by making the Warriors play to their style that they may have an advantage. I wasn't at this game. I was up at Katy covering Fulshire Cinco Ranch. Joel wasn't at this game. He was at Rhodes Stadium covering Needville and Houston Yates. So I have to tip my cap to the Fort Bend Herald executive editor, Scott Willey, who took the reins and covered this game for us. He certainly he'll be the first to tell you he's not the biggest sports guy himself. He doesn't watch the game the same way that a lot of us do, but he enjoys the game. He enjoys being around it and helping us out when we had a little bit of need to get an extra set of eyes on some of our games. So I want to take this moment to thank Scott for doing that for us. He does a lot of great work on the news side and just kind of running the ship here at the Herald so that Joel and I can kind of go around to whichever games we want to check out throughout the course of the week. I thought he did a nice job on his write-up. So where do the Falcons go from here, right? They think they found something in junior quarterback Cannon Wolf, who took the reins about midway through the season and helped them start to move the ball. They're going to be losing seniors and guys like Byron Fantroy and Caleb Lawson, but Bubba McDowell, is going to UTEP. There are pieces that they are going to miss moving forward. But it's a Falcons team that also, there's belief within the program that they think they may have refound themselves a little bit. And of course, we're going to have to see what we're looking at in terms of the UIL classifications. Foster turned in a number that this year would have been 5A D1. Although I'm hearing lately that the 6A cutoff may be significantly lower, not just than this past cycle, but than what we have expected throughout it. So we have to wait and see official word on what those classifications are going to look like from the UIL. So whether they are back in 6A D2, whether they are down in 5A D1, we'll have a lot to say on, schedules and who they're playing, when they're playing them, that kind of a deal. But there are players in this program, there are athletes in this program that are excited for what's next. I know Coach Hanks and his staff are excited to do that. Back-to-back playoff trips, 2 years in 6A. Pretty good work from Hanks and his staff and that locker room there on the black and gold track. So congratulations to the Falcons on a great season. I know it's not the way you'd hope to see that end, but I think making the postseason with this roster, with the start that they had, a heck of an accomplishment. And we at the Herald are excited to see what they got moving forward.
In need of professional care with a personal touch?
Physical therapy care and aquatic rehab of Fort Bend can get you back to work, life, and play free from pain. With locations in Richmond and the Fulshire Katy area, Physical therapy care and aquatic rehab of Fort Bend offers orthopedics, sports medicine, vertigo and balance rehab, and post-surgical rehab, and more. Call today at 281-344-8900 and find out how Physical therapy care and aquatic rehab of Fort Bend can listen, educate, and return you to functional independence.
This week's By District Scoreboard is brought to you by Creekside Christian Fellowship, introducing the unchurched to Christ and having a significant impact on the community with weekly service times Thursdays at 7 p.m., Sundays at 9:30 and at 11 a.m. with children's ministries available during all services. Call today at 832-595-7676 or pay him a visit at 16628 Highway 36 in Needville and find out how Creekside Christian Fellowship fits in to your life. And with the first round, it is of course, the biggest round in terms of number of teams playing around the area. We were busy on Thursday and Friday, I should say. Much lighter slate on Saturday, but elsewhere around the area, Pearland knocks out Fort Bend Travis 59-27, while Ridge Point hangs on and wins a thriller 21-16 over Pearland Dawson. The Panthers, of course, set up a second-round match up against North Shore by avoiding the upset. Elsewhere around the area, Shadow Creek beat Fort Bend Bush 57-13, while Hightower fell 70-35 to Manville. Brazos bows out in the first round 42-41 to Lexington. Navasota beats Houston North Forest 56-12. Wharton gets beat in the first round of the playoffs after returning to the postseason, 51-21. West Orange Stark coming out on top, while East Bernard beats Rogers 35-15. So in the area, Straight Jesuit beats Katy Paytow 36-21. The Crusaders move on, while Iowa Colony does its part in trying to set up a future region final matchup against Randle. They beat Belton 54-14. Bastrop, another potential meeting for Randle in the playoffs, beat San Antonio Burbank 62-0. Also in 582, Brenham knocks off Texas City 28-7, and Waco University bids farewell to the Fort Bend Marshall Buffs 35-27. Rounding out the area's action, Cal Allen knocks out El Campo 27-14. Fort Bend Crawford beats Houston Worthing 50-7, while Stafford moves on with a convincing 49-7 win over Houston Wheatley, and Louise bows out 49-8 against La Villa. It is time for this week's Kyle D. McRae Dental Player of the Week. Kyle McRae has been creating healthy and beautiful smiles in the Richmond-Rosenberg area since 1994. Dr. McRae and Dr. Mary George are both graduates of and current professors at the Herman Hospital-based General Practice Residency Program for UTDS Houston. Their goal is to work with each patient to produce the best possible outcome based on that patient's individual needs and desires. And as it was a tough week in the first round, kind of limited our highlight standout performances to really just one team, but there were a few of them for the Randle Lions in that first round win over Colleen Ellison. Notably, of course, Landon Williams-Callis, another 200-yard performance, 31 carries, 217 yards, and 3 scores. The Lions weren't great. We talked about this earlier. They weren't great in that game at all. I thought that first quarter they played was about as poorly as they have played in a quarter since the opening of that Iowa Colony game. Of course, they had 3 fumbles, trailed 21-0. A big part of that was Landon Williams-Callis only had 30 yards across his first 10 touches. So if you want to look at it that way, right, 21 carries for 187 yards and 3 scores. That's a lot more Landon Williams-Callis efficiency than what we really ultimately saw with the 31 touches. I don't think Randle would like to see him carry the ball 31 times in a game the rest of the way through the playoffs. But that's where keeping him fresh in the regular season and limiting those to 12, 15, 16 carries in a game gives you more gas, I think, in the postseason to carry the load like that. He did have a long 64-yard touchdown run in the Wildcat. He rolled his ankle right before halftime. Was a little nervous about whether or not he would return if he was healthy enough to continue playing, and had a 20-yard touchdown run up the middle where you go, oh yeah, no, that's Landon. He looked all right. So, certainly a good start to the postseason for Williams Callis.
That's kind of scary when you see something like that happen, especially to your premier player
Yeah.
on that team. But a rolled ankle is better than a high ankle sprain and anything else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to see him to even go back and produce the way he did, yeah, you're right. He deserves he did what he needed to do as well. So that was good to see. As far as Scoreboardshow is concerned, and you haven't talked about him.
Yeah.
You talk about him then.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say we'll tip our cap. We got a couple other guys here as well. First, I wanted to talk about Noriel Dominguez, the senior linebacker for the Lions as well. He did have an interception and a fumble recovery. The fumble recovery was big. Colleen Ellison had converted the first down on a fourth down try, and as the runner got past the sticks, the ball got knocked out. He lands on top of the ball. Big turnover for the Lions. Had a big pick before halftime that also almost resulted in points, but a turnover on the final play for the Lions in the first half kind of nullified that. But Dominguez, a really big performance out of the senior in a day where not a lot of the defense played great. There's a lot of missed tackles in that game, which is kind of a weird game throughout. But as you mentioned here, let's talk about Tyler Scorebourdshow. Well over 300 yards passing on the day. He was really, really efficient. 325 yards, 25 of 32 throwing the ball. He had 2 scores and an interception. Also ran for a touchdown on a tush push from the 1 yard line. Got that in. He's a big guy, so it's cool to see Randle utilize him that way. But one drive in particular, Scorebourdshow went 7 for 7. Just look, big yardage totals are the norm for this Randle offense. Just what we're going to see throughout the course of the year. And you and I both have agreed this wide receiver core feels more dynamic for Randle than it has in the past, and that's even without senior receiver DeCorian Rubin. Guys like Ashton Johnson, Kamar Chavez-Brown, Cedric McClintock, Mason Mixon, guys that make plays in that second level in the offense, and really strong performance. That's why Tyler Scorebourdshow is our player of the week.
He should be, and I'm glad that he is, and I'm glad that he played like that because he has to keep playing like that, and even better than that.
Yeah.
But of course, it takes a team. Team doesn't play well, but still wins. I mean, there's always things that go on, in the background that we don't know about. But still, to see him play the way he played, I like that.
Yeah.
Because moving forward, it's gonna get tougher, and who knows about Pflugerville or Connolly.
And worth noting, too, the one interception Scorebourdshow threw was that turnover at the end of the second half that really wiped points off of the board. I know head coach Bryan Randle was really upset at the play calling in that moment. He would have liked to have seen maybe a run play timeout at the end of the clock and try to kick that field goal to get points. I think it's really easy to say that in hindsight. I mean, you're snapping the ball. There's plenty. I think there was 12 seconds, 13 seconds left in the half at the point when they snapped that ball. And he had a receiver open in the end zone. I don't have a problem with your quarterback taking a shot to the end zone on a play like that because there's still time to kick if that goes awry. The ball was just a little underthrown across the middle of the field, deep. Sometimes that opens up for either a safety to come up from that extra level or somebody lurking from underneath to pick up the ball. Like I said, maybe a step underthrown. It wasn't a bad ball by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't have a problem with them taking that chance. I know that those who were at the game may have seen Coach Randle spiking his hat, yelling and screaming on the sidelines. But at the end of the day, I don't hate seeing Scorebourdshow be aggressive and trying to push the envelope to add some more points on the board.
I'd rather see him be aggressive than not.
Yeah,
I'd rather see him do it, and I'm glad that he's running. I mean, this was the first year. We didn't see him run much last year. But this year they're pushing him to, hey, you know what? Take off. You see an opening, take off.
Yes.
He's not that fast.
Yeah.
So, but at least he's doing that.
Yeah.
So
again, big time congratulations to this week's Kyle D. McRae Dental Player of the Week, senior Randle quarterback Tyler Scorebourdshow. Our by-district numbers this week brought to you by Bull Creek Cafe Grill and Bar, Bull Creek in Rosenberg. Call them today at 281-341-8170 and find out all about their game day good taste and good times. 13-year recipient of the Best of Fort Bend County, serving the Fort Bend County and surrounding areas. Give a chicken fried steak, a burger, their liver and onions a try, even some catfish or nachos. They got some good foods out there. Make sure to give them a try. Like I said, 918 San Jacinto Street in Rosenberg, right across from Burke's Outlet. And really, you said busy week for us. Came in 5 teams in action across 3 different divisions as well. We're really 4 different divisions when you break 6A into D1 and D2. Right. What stood out in your mind this week, Joel?
Probably the 277 by-district playoff games.
Yeah.
We're on the Texas Football Scoreboard, which is the one we check online to find our scores. And now this week, 135 area ones coming our way. So just a reduction of from one point to the other, you go half.
Yeah.
You go half. So that's what stood out with me. But really what stood out with me with this past weekend was the way we lost our teams. I mean, we went from 5 to 1.
Yeah.
But it tells you a lot about who is still standing and how far they could go.
You're down to just a quarter of the high school football teams in the state still standing going into the area round, right? It always says a lot about whoever is still around at this point. Even if you are a 1 seed beating a 4 seed, whatever. Hey, you're still, for every 4 teams that are for every grouping of 4, you're one left. 3 of them were knocked out. You remain. Of course, we got a little lucky last year. Needville won a game. Fulshire won a couple games in the postseason. So this year our attention kind of turns on the Lions a little bit sooner, than it did a year ago. But the fact that Randle is sticking around, that they've now won 27 games in a row and are trying to go 36-0 ultimately, right? Pardon me. That's not the right number. 32-0 ultimately. It says a lot about what they've been able to achieve for sure.
Yeah. Randle Lions 11-0 taking on Pflugerville Colony Cougars, who are 7-4. They finished 3rd in District 11 5A Division 2. And this is the first meeting between both. Mm-hmm. So we're going to call it the Battle of the Cats. Cougars against the Lions. But you know what? Thinking about that, the Lion is going to eat the Cougar with no problem. But there might be one if the toothpick technique doesn't work for the Lions, because the Cougars are smaller than the Lions.
Yeah.
They could use them at toothpicks, but if they don't like it, they can spit it out. All right, here's a trivia for you. Past 4 seasons, Randle has faced various teams along the way during the season and the playoffs. How many teams are they under 500 of those teams?
Oh man, that's a really good question. So off the top of my head, I would say probably Montgomery Lake Creek. Oh boy. I'm going to say there's a chance. I think they're probably 1-2 all time against Huntsville. So there's 2. I'm going to say that they're 0-1 all time against Columbia. Or they may be 1-1 now that I think about it. You know what? I'm gonna go and say 3. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say there are 3 teams that they are under 500 against all time.
I found 2 of them that you mentioned.
Okay.
Huntsville 1-2, Lake Creek 0-2. I didn't see the Columbia one. I know they're like 1-1.
Yeah, so it's funny enough. The first high school football game I ever covered in Texas was Randle against Columbia, and worth noting in that game, Columbia won 36-35. I remember they went for 2 late in the fourth quarter to kind of tip the tides. Randle let that game get away. Mm-hmm. Coach Randle had mentioned to me, hey, we still haven't figured out how to win yet. That's kind of the thing. I finished that game. It was a Saturday morning contest. I went and got lunch at Torchy's Tacos in town right there at Brazos Town Crossing. While I'm at Torchy's, I was watching the TVs, playing college football. I watched Washington State upset Wisconsin, led by none other than Columbia legend, future Heisman winner, and first-round pick, number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward. And that's when I found out Cam Ward was from West Columbia, Texas. Played for the team I had just covered not even 2 hours before that. Just kind of a cool little small world moment for me in an intro to Texas high school ball.
Yeah, that's funny. That is funny. But yeah, imagine Randle. I mean, they just started 4 seasons ago, and they already have a state title with them. And now they have this long win streak that is the best in the state. I mean, how small is that world? You're going to the first football game of Randle, but you never envision things like that happening.
Yeah, So it's funny, a guy that you and I both know and work with, Nick Irene, of course, who used to work at the Herald for a little while, texted me the night that Randle won the state title. I'd gotten back to the place we were staying. We stayed in the area to visit some friends of ours, that weekend. But he texted me. I had gotten back to the place, was getting ready to pass out. He goes, "Man, this is crazy that Randle won," because of course he covered Randle's first ever game that they played at the varsity level, and so yeah, for the folks that were kind of here from ground zero and got to see this thing kind of build and start, and back when you were hearing rumors of this kid in junior high that was coming up through the tracks that was going to be a problem for whoever he ended up playing for, between that and now for them to be, top of the conversation, it's certainly in 5AD2, but I think across the state, it says a lot to the talent there. It says a lot about the coaching staff and the guys that Bryan Randle surrounds his program with.
And by we talked about this before, by what's building around Randle as far as that campus is concerned, they're only going to get better.
Yeah, you figure, there's a lot of open, empty space there for neighborhoods and whatever else to drive. You think similar things at schools like George Ranch, Tomas as well, areas that, you talk about hyper growth and LCISD, booming the way that it has. We're still talking about a school district where less than 50% of the area within the taxable district is developed. So we're sitting here right now, currently, we've got 3 6A schools, although that is very likely to change with the next realignment cycle. But you're talking about a district with 3 6A schools at the moment with all of the room in the world to grow and get even bigger. And now with the bond pass that will relocate Terry High School and allow us to redraw the district lines to make Lamar Consolidated bigger and Terry bigger. Sky's the limit. The sky's the limit for really programs all around this area.
And I'm ready to move out of Rosenberg already, because it's getting too crowded where I'm at already. When I was there about 9-10 years ago, it wasn't like that.
Sure.
But now it seems like, wow, there's just so much traffic, and I got to go somewhere where like El Campo or something like that. So
take it from experience. That 45-minute commute one way each day gets a little long, I can tell you.
Yeah, but we got 59 there, so it'd be all express. So, but yeah, that was numbers. It wasn't much of it. It's just kind of plugging in and trying to see what happens this weekend and fast forward to the rest. So I think it'll be, Randle's going to have an interesting run. They'll be facing some teams they've never faced before. They'll be seeing some new competition along the way. And yeah, like before, when the season started, everybody's aiming for them, and that still hasn't stopped.
And of course, Randle plays a Pflugerville Connolly team that is coming off a big win over San Antonio Johnson, big shutout win. I think they scored 60 some odd points in that contest and rolled to the second round. Now they've got this Connolly team, and they're going to play. The winner of this contest is going to play the winner of Waco University against Bastrop.
Yep.
I think that's an interesting matchup there. Of course, Bastrop's been in the state rankings most of the season. Waco University beat Brenham, which was I think the number 3 team in the preseason in 5AD2, and they beat them badly, very, very badly. Now, of course, team that lost to Ellison, that lost to Colleen Ellison earlier in the year as well. So I don't really know what to make quite out of that district just yet. Yep. But those are going to be the next 2 rounds before what we're all kind of bracing ourselves, preparing ourselves, circling our calendars for, which is round 4 between Randle and Iowa Colony in a potential regional final rematch. And with how crazy that first round, or that first matchup went this regular season back in week 4, I think we're kind of all hoping that's what we get to see again, possibly at NRG Stadium.
As good as Randle is, they still have those games.
Yeah.
They still have those games where, especially, and the coach will let you know right away, how well they played, how well they didn't play.
Yeah.
And normally it's how well they didn't play. Even though things went as good as they did, whatever win they got, he's always seen the negative side of it. And I don't blame him, because you're right. At times you don't see, when you watch these games and Randle is so loaded and done what it's done and continuing forward, they still have their moments, man.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. That's why it makes it interesting. Even though Randle is hopefully going back for another state title, Do you think that Oak Cliff is kind of have something on some type of a wall? Has Randle up there kind of moving along like they are?
Well, I don't know how week to week a program like South Oak Cliff is paying attention to Houston area programs at all. The what's interesting to me, right, is that's a revenge game for South Oak Cliff.
Oh, yeah.
They're talking about trying to get back and win it. They've now lost 2 straight state championship games. Yep. So it is. You talk a lot about the motivation of the Bears going into this season. There's a reason, as much as I may disagree with ranking South Oak Cliff number 1 in 5A D2 right now. And that is of course we're referencing the Dave Campbell's Texas football poll where they've got the Bears there. Matt Stepp says the reason for that ranking is if South Oak Cliff were to play Randle today, South Oak Cliff would be roughly a 10-point favorite going into that contest. To me, Randle was your preseason number 1 team in the state. They were your preseason number 1 team in the state for a reason. And the closest game, the only game that they had within a score, that was even finished remotely close, was against the team that was in your top 5 in the preseason anyway. And you rallied from down 21-0 to beat that team. Yep. I still think there's plenty of opportunity. I know if Randle wins and goes all the way back to Arlington and we're getting ready for a state championship game, the conversation in the press box is going to be exactly the same that it was last year, which is how does Randle keep the game close? Yep. I thought it was a ridiculous question then, and I'm going to think it's a ridiculous question now because all they have to do to keep it close is to walk off the bus. You get the guys off the bus without twisting an ankle, without hurting themselves in the shower. I think that Randle has everything that they need to do to compete with that SOC team. Of course, they got to get there.
Yep.
Of course, they've got to beat an Iowa Colony team that I imagine is going to be mad as hell that they've got to go through this team again. But I've said it a lot.
And what's their record against Iowa Colony so far?
Currently, right now, they are 3-0 all the time against the Pioneers. Yep. And I've talked about this quote earlier this season. Keelan Sweeney, I asked him after the regional final last year about beating a team as good as Iowa Colony twice in a season. He said it's hard to beat a good team twice, but it's harder to beat a great team once. Yep. I don't know how well that math works out when you're trying to beat a good team 4 times. Yeah. But as Brian Randle said, it's nice that you guys are on a revenge tour, but you're going to have to do it all again next year because we're going to take care of business. And that's what the Lions have been about since day 1. Look, we talked a lot today, and I've talked to a lot of folks this weekend about how poorly Randle played in week 12 in the bi-district round against Killeen Ellison. Mm-hmm. I think it's about as poorly as they've played in the first quarter since that game against Iowa Colony. They won 54-20. They played poorly. They had a bad showing. They looked sloppy and undisciplined, and their guards couldn't block, and they were getting blown up at the line of scrimmage, and they won by 34 points. I went on Legacy Sports halftime show during the Fulshire Cinco Ranch game. They had me on to talk about stuff going on around the area, and they asked me about that Randle game and how dominant that they were Thursday night because they saw the score, and I'm like, guys, it wasn't anything dominant about what they did. There was a stretch of play where they scored a touchdown, and then they got a turnover, scored another touchdown, then they got a pick 6. That blew the score up. But we know, you and I both know as well as anybody, a blowout win for Randle is 75-0. You don't have a chance. This was a tie game, 7-7 at one point, right? Randle took the lead for good on a field goal. It was a 10-7 game. Killeen Ellison got the ball back with a chance to take the lead against the Lions. Of course, that didn't work out for the Eagles, but that's the bar, right? It's an impossibly high bar for Randle. But a buddy asked me during the run last year, it was as I was tweeting out their 79-0 win over Elgin in the second round at Merrill Green Stadium in Bryan. When are the scores going to get normal? This is a playoffs. When do the scores return to normal? I said, well, there's very little that's normal about this Randle team. Yeah. There's very little about what they do, and when you have that talent, when you have that depth, when you have the pedigree of getting it done when it counts, 54-20, you look at that and go, man, what went wrong? What didn't they do right? I'm a little worried for Pflugerville Connolly in that they're going to be playing a Randle team that has probably run the steps of the bleachers at Randle High School 4 dozen times between Thursday night and Friday when they make the trip back up to Bryan, it's going to be an angry Randle coaching staff for sure, and I would expect a much more focused effort out of this group, at game time.
Coach Randle wants to see a 10-point deficit. He wants to go in 10 points. 10 points that they're somebody else's favorite 10 points. Because I think he works better in that situation, and so do his players because they have to hear it from their coach all week.
Yeah.
So going in as an underdog is something good for them.
And I think if you are the Randle players, if you're Randle fans, if you're Randle coaching staff even, you hope that the wake-up call was this week. You hope that you have that moment. If you remember it wasn't. We sit here and talk about facing Iowa Colony almost like it's a foregone conclusion in the regional final, right?
Yep.
Of course, Iowa Colony has to do a lot right to get to that point as it is. But if you go back to Waller at Daikin Stadium in the regional quarterfinal, regional semifinal against Brenham a season ago, Randle leads 21-14, third and long, deep inside its own territory, as Brenham had scored 14 straight points leading up to that. We're talking about Tyler Skrabanek hitting Landon Williams-Callis on a wheel route for a 68-yard touchdown. We are that play away for maybe not even having been to the regional final for the state champs last year. A lot has to go right for them to get back, and it doesn't matter if it's Iowa Colony or Brenham. Surprises. You don't want that moment of, oh crap, staring into the abyss. The Lions are going to hope that giving up 20 points in a playoff opener is that moment and not, now we have to make a play in a game or else.
Saying all of that, let's just take it one at a time.
Yeah.
Let's go with Pflugerville Connolly this week and just get it over with, and then we can talk about whoever's next.
What's your give me a prediction for that game? You talked about it's a cat fight between Connolly and Randle. What do you expect to see out of the Lions in terms of the scoreboard?
I think the Randle Lions will be more settled, I guess you could say, a little bit more. Let's do this business thing. Let's get it over with and move on, with hopefully not too many injuries, not too many things that happen bad for them. I think they'll play better against Connolly.
Do you have a score?
34-0.
34-0?
Just all. That's all.
I think I'm expecting to see something like in the line of like 45-7. And the 45-7 is maybe the score comes late, but I think if you see Randle get to a margin like that, you would love to see Brady Bratcher come into the game and Amari Louisville come into the game and Isaiah Ajubele catching passes. You don't want to see a lot of Landon Williams-Callis in the second half, or Tyler Skrabanek, or Carshevas Brown, Ashton Johnson. You want to see some of these younger guys get in, not only for the sake of just securing injury risk and mitigating that as much as possible. Not only for that, but also next season when Landon Williams-Callis is a senior and they've got Bratcher presumably sliding into that starting role as Tyler Skrabanek graduates. You want guys that have seen as many snaps in a postseason environment as possible to take the reins and to move this program even further. So I think Randle wanted to get out better than they did this past week on Thursday night. Bryan Randle said as much after the game that he was hoping this was going to be a 56-7 kind of game that it just never turned out to. The defense is going to, I expect the defense to tackle better. I expect the offensive line to block better. Yep. I expect special teams to not have multiple penalties thrown against them. I expect more of what we expect out of Randle football. And like I said, I think something 45-7 in that range will make Bryan Randle sleep much easier at night going into the regional semis.
Whether it's 35-0, 45-7, I guarantee you that all of those players will have a toothpick in their mouth.
All right, so that is going to do it here for us on this by-district edition of the Fort Bend Herald Football Scoreboard Show. For Joel Luna, I am Sam Cinta. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you out here with the update about what the Lions do in that area round contest against Pflugerville Connolly next week.